Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. Let me start out by saying I have always enjoyed watching Kevin Pillar play baseball. But, Kevin, you are wrong on this. So wrong. I mean, I'm a Kevin Pillar fan. I broadcast his games when he was playing for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats in the Eastern League, and I was broadcasting New Britain Rockcats games. And you knew it was a matter of time before Pillar would be in the big leagues. And you knew that if someday his time ran out with the Blue Jays, some other team would pick him up. And he played with several teams in the big leagues. Why? Because there was always a need for a Kevin Pillar. I mean, teams he played for, too numerous to mention, but he has come out with a post on X that I'm so in disagreement with over the fight between the Angels' Jorge Soler, DH, and Atlanta Braves pitcher Reynaldo Lopez. They had a big brawl the other night in Anaheim, and in case you missed it, it led to the suspension of both players for, what was it? Let me say, 7 games. 7 games for the big brawl in Anaheim. So Pillar puts this post out on X, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. I get it. And again, I'm a Pillar fan. I want to emphasize that. But Kevin, you're wrong on this. But he puts on X, this is a joke. Why is the punishment so massive for 2 grown men who have some beef? Let the boys play, fight, and then move on. To begin with, 7 games is not a massive penalty. 30 games is a massive penalty. Half a season is a massive penalty. 7 games is not a massive penalty. But beyond that, in fact, I think 7 games is a reasonable penalty. But you can't have these players fighting. And even if it goes back to some kind of individual beef between these players that goes back years, and I've broadcast games where I've seen pitchers hit a batter in the square of the back, claim that they lost control, that there was an accident, but in a game that meant nothing. And you're asking yourself, well, why would a pitcher somehow lose his control, quote unquote, lose his control in that situation and hit a batter? Why? Well, it might go back to a beef, not even in the major leagues. Might have been a beef from winter ball. In fact, one of the games I broadcast, this pitcher, I'm not going to mention the players' names or the teams, but figure it out. This was at AAA, and the player got hit square in the back. And I'm like, whatever happened between these two? Well, it turned out it was a beef that they had in winter ball back in the day. So you don't know, and maybe it had nothing to do with the beef from years back as far as Soler and Lopez were concerned. But beyond that, you can't call 7 games as being a massive punishment. Kevin, I'm sorry, the commissioner has got to keep the game under control. And if the commissioner didn't come out with a 7-game punishment for these players, then what else do you think would happen with other players, with other beefs, with other issues that would suddenly be settled on the field in regards to some kind of physical activity? You can't have that. You really can't. So, again, to Kevin Pillar, and like I said, I loved watching Pillar play, but I'm sorry, he's wrong on this one. And to say this is a joke, it's not a joke, Kevin. This is serious stuff. And you can't be having baseball fights all the time. You just can't. So good for Major League Baseball. Good for the commissioner. By the way, the punishment, actually very reasonable. 7 games is not massive at all. It's a very reasonable punishment. So I disagree with Kevin Pillar on this one, and you move forward, and we'll see what happens. Both are appealing, by the way. Of course they're appealing. So you know what's going to happen? They'll probably reduce it to 4 games, believe it or not, because you do have the appeal process. But you've got to come down hard when you've got this kind of a situation. And in this case, that's what Major League Baseball did, and Major League Baseball should be applauded for it, and you move on. Simple as that. Couple of other thoughts. My goodness. I picked the Detroit. I have the Tigers as the best team in baseball. At what point are they going to start showing it? I know it's early in the season, but you like, even with this small sample size, and believe me, it is a real small sample size. Remember, at one point in April of 2025, the Houston Astros were 10 games under 500. That used to be, by the way, no matter when in the season, the dividing line. If you got to 10 games under 500, it was almost impossible you were going to recover. And the Astros got to 10 games under 500 in April and then surged into first place. The Mets, the 2024 Mets, remember in June, they were 12 games under 500. And they ended up playing in the National League Championship Series. The game has changed so many ways. Like I said, in the old days, 12 games under 500, 10 games under 500, you'd have to fight just to get to 500. And if you did, or if somehow you went to the season 1 or 2 games over 500, then it was considered an accomplishment if you had fallen 10 games or 12 games under at one point. Now, these teams surge. They could be 10 games under 500 in April and 20 games over 500 come July. So I can't be too upset with the start of the Tigers. But remember, I picked the Tigers to win it all in 2026 and to play the Cubs in the World Series. So like I said, small sample size, still early. It's been cold. These guys, it isn't, you can't draw any conclusions this early in the season. But we can have a little fun. And that's the part of baseball I like. You can have some fun. If your team is in first place in April and they were picked to finish last, then you get a chance to boast. You get a chance to maybe give it to your friend. Hey, look at my team. We're in first. Your team's in last. You just got to understand it is a marathon, not a sprint. 162-game season is a long season. But again, to Kevin Pillar, 7 games, Kevin, is not a massive punishment. That's going to do it for Dan on Sports. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing to my newsletter. And to do that, you can go to danonsports.com. See you later.